So today's kind of live stream, today's brief conversation is really just trying to give you a little bit of an idea of what will be coming over the next few weeks of live streams. So what I'm kind of talking, what I'm calling this is actually talking about anxiety. So today is very much just a short intro about what you can expect, and a little bit about me, a little bit about the program that we run that is very strongly attached to kind of this live stream, which is actually called, I think it's Act On Anxiety. I think that's the specific, yes, Act On Anxiety, that middle bit. So, you've all been waiting, so I'll cut to the chase. So really, I suppose, just a little bit of an introduction to me. So I am the face that will be taking up your screen for the next few weeks while we're on these live streams. My name's Mike. I'm also known as Michael. If you call me Michael, I'm going to assume I'm in trouble. So, use that as you will. Little bit of me kind of personally. So I am an expat Kiwi, so I'm a New Zealander. I've been in Australia probably since about 2006. I can't get rid of the whole I'm still a Kiwi thing. I don't think it matters how long I'll live here. Personally, so I have a wife, I have a daughter who's 12. Trust me, there's a whole thing about teens. Are they really teens? Are they getting younger? It's, 12-year-old. Anyway, I am also a fur dad. Like I have a dog. Although my dog is 13 and kind of deaf and pretty much geriatric, so I think that makes me more of a carer than a parent to her. Anyway, I am also an unabashed geek. I like all things sci-fi, fantasy, pop culture, you name it. Very strongly attached to things like Doctor Who, Harry Potter, the Marvel Universe, all of that kind of stuff. I am also a member of a motorcycle group where we just do rides for kids. So we'll go and put a smile on a kid's face. So there's a lot of kind of facets, I suppose, to who I am. And I think the important part and the reason that I raise some of that is when we are going through a lot of this kind of live stream program, for want of a better term, that will be really important. When we start talking about anxiety and we start talking about ACT as an actual mode, which I'll explain what ACT is shortly, a lot of what needs to fit into there, into this kind of sphere, for want of a better term, is having multiple aspects, being able to kind of sit in an area and being okay or knowing at least who you are. So part of the thing that I'm always very big on is having that clear understanding of, okay, who am I? What are the bits of me? A little bit of just kind of an explanation in terms of experience. So, psychology experience or life experience, I suppose. So psychology experience, I studied psychology when I was at university in New Zealand, and that's going back to like 1999, so it's been a while. Came to Australia, worked in banking for a while, really got back into psychology again by going into the prison system and running therapeutic groups. So I've done a lot of groups on everything from problem solving all the way through drug and alcohol stuff to problematic behaviours like violence, like domestic violence, so a wide range of kind of different topics. Left the prison system to complete my registration and worked for a not-for-profit. So during the not-for-profit years, I worked with carers. So I actually worked with parents, I worked with partners, I worked with the people who were around a mental health issue rather than the person directly with it. Left that system and went into private practice. So I spent about 18 months working in private practice, working out of kind of down in the Mandurah area, so dealing very much then with the person with the mental health concern. Moved from that back into the prison again, spent a little bit of time working individuals in the prison rather than groups, and now I'm here. Part of the reason that I kind of give you the little snapshotty bit is to try and highlight, I suppose, the methodologies that I use. So the things that we talk about, whether that is ACT, which is very much what this live stream is going to be about, Whether it's CBT, which is cognitive behaviour therapy, most people know that. Whether it's DBT, which is dialectic behaviour therapy. It's a little more hazy, but it also fits in there. I've had training in schema, I've had training in EMDR. You think of an acronym, I've probably had training in it. But one of the things that I suppose I'm really keen on, at least considering, it's all of these bits together add up to something that can be helpful for most people. So in this kind of series of live streams, we're very specifically looking at ACT and how it fits into anxiety. That doesn't mean that all these other little bits and pieces won't be in there. And it doesn't mean that if there's something going on that isn't specifically anxiety, but somebody out there is like, oh, how does this fit with this? I suppose I really don't want people to be thinking, oh, well, I can't ask that, or I can't, maybe I'll just hold that one and ask somebody later. And I'll come on to that in a second as well, about the wanting questions and talking about stuff. So I suppose to continue kind of where I'm going with this, but to very specifically talk about where this live stream series will go. So the idea of this is we're going to be talking about like a multitude of different topics centered around anxiety. So every live stream, is that a thing? Live stream, I'm sure there is a live stream. Anyway, for every live stream that we do, it will be on a different topic or a couple of different things around anxiety specifically, and how anxiety can be managed or considered through this ACT process. So I think the key part that I want to start with, and the next live stream will probably talk a lot more about what is anxiety and how anxiety is different to things like fear, but also how it's very similar to kind of a fear. I think the thing that I want right from the outset to be very clear about is anxiety is, I hesitate to use the word, but normal. There's a level of every person is going to have some level of anxiety about different things. Now, that's not to say that the whole point of this is to go, it's anxiety, don't worry about it, just get on with your life, or all those other kind of things that you have probably heard. But the idea is, what I don't want is people to think, I have anxiety and this is this huge thing, this is this insurmountable, unclimbable mountain. But I also don't want to think that anybody who hears this thinks that they're different, that they're by themselves, that they're abnormal. None of those terms, none of those thought processes are even vaguely realistic. So a lot of what we're going to look at is going to be kind of normalizing that sense of anxiety, but absolutely trying to apply things to how we can manage that. How can we make it so that it doesn't impact our lives and stop us having the life that we want to have? During the process, there'll be a range of things that'll come up, which kind of the three main ones that always come to mind for me is very much around the unhelpful thoughts and how we think about things and the little voice in your head and how that plays into anxiety. Very much playing into the unhelpful emotions. I very much have a theory that whenever somebody says, they're this single emotion, my very first thought is, no. Like there's multiple emotions. I don't actually believe that I believe that we very, very rarely have a single emotion. I think most of the time we have a combination of emotions all at once. Now, one of the things that really plays out then in unhelpful emotions is if I fixate on one component of that, even if I'm trying to manage that one component, all these other things are interfering with that. And then that plays into my thought process thinking, why can't I get on top of it? So the thoughts and the feelings, there is very much a connection between those. During these live streams, we're going to break those apart a bit. We're going to talk about the thoughts. We're going to talk about the feelings, or the emotions, or the physiological sensations. We're then going to, in a different live stream, I keep saying lime stream. I'm going to change the name of this to lime stream, just because it's apparently easier for my head. During the live streams, in another one, we may then put that together and start talking very specifically about how those interplay between each other. One of the other things that is very much kind of my wheelhouse, which we'll come into as well, is the impact of words. The impact of words, the impact of labels, what I say to myself, and how that impacts those kind of unhelpful thoughts or those unhelpful emotions. What I tell myself that directly hinders my ability to manage those thoughts or those emotions. So there'll be a lot of kind of the thoughts and the emotions, but all of the bits and pieces that come into that as well. All of the other things, the labels, the things we hear from outside of us, the stresses, the tensions, all these other kind of things. To look at anxiety, and especially to approach it through a process of the ACT model, it needs to be holistic, it needs to be context driven. We need to look at all of these things to really kind of break into and understand something. As I kind of briefly mentioned, I encourage questions. For every Friday at 9:30, for the next kind of 6 to 7 weeks, I will be sitting down or standing, depending on what's happening, with nothing other than the purpose of talking about anxiety and how ACT works on it. And what will make my life way easier is if I'm actually getting feedback, if I'm getting questions, if I'm having people ask me, how does this work or how does that work? Bear in mind, as has been evidenced by the technological difficulties to start with, I'm still working out how I'm going to read those comments and how I'm going to see them and that kind of stuff, but I'll work through that, it'll be fine. But I would absolutely encourage people, if you have questions during the week, chuck them on the Facebook page. Save them up, and then once the live stream starts, chuck them in there. Give me things that I can kind of talk to as well. I like to consider that I know a little bit about a lot of things. At the same time, I have no issues at all if I get a question and I just don't have the answer to it, to say, I have no idea, I'll come back to that. I don't pretend to know everything about everything. If I get a question that stumps me, I will do some research and I will try and find an answer, but I'm not going to try and fool people into pretending that I know the answer. If you've given me the respect of asking me that question, I'm going to give you the respect of trying to give you an answer, even if that answer is, I don't know at the moment. Very brief kind of intro of what ACT is. So ACT is short, it's an acronym for Acceptance Commitment Therapy. The idea of acceptance commitment therapy, one of the key parts of ACT you probably will have heard, and that is mindfulness. ACT is very big on mindfulness. Mindfulness through ACT is literally the process of noticing and being present in the moment. And those two things are the cornerstones of the ACT process as I use it anyway. Very much about the process of being in the present moment and just noticing. No judgments, no expectations, just noticing. Now, I'm not stupid enough to pretend that it's as easy as me just saying, there you go, and you going, oh, magic, it worked. We know it's not that simple. We know the act of being in the present, it's something we all want to do. It's not that simple. What I'm hoping that we're going to do over the next few weeks is we're going to make it a little bit clearer, a little bit easier to start practicing those kind of acceptance skills, those ACT skills that will allow us to become more present. Not present all the time, I don't think that's realistic, but to become present when we need to be and to become more present. And like all things, the more we practice something, the easier it is to be able to do it again. Acceptance is not being happy or being okay with something that's happening. If you're dealing with something that frankly is really shitty, you don't have to be okay with it happening. What we want in acceptance though is that you learn to be okay with not being okay. I'll talk about that more once we kind of get into it. I don't want to, I could talk about that for ages by itself. Things like that are the topics. Those are the kind of things that we'll be trying to talk about. How do I build the sense of being okay with not being okay and separate that from expecting myself to be okay or happy with what's going on. The live streams that we're doing, so the actually talking about anxiety, see, act, a little bit of a pun in there, you'll get used to those, trust me. They are going to be very similar. They are going to be around the topics that would be in the program Act on Anxiety. This is more, I think I'm even calling it a primer for Act on Anxiety. The idea of this is we run Act on Anxiety regularly. So we actually run this as a program. This is going to be very much just little bits of topics, little bits of kind of ideas, understanding thoughts, answering questions, generally talking about how ACT plays with anxiety. The Act on Anxiety program is going to be this amped up. So there's a lot more time for processing. There's a lot more time for questions. It's an in-person group, so you're actually sitting in the room, generally with me. So we have those kind of conversations. This is very much just the little bits. The program itself, that's the same kind of thing, but way more in depth, a lot more kind of chance to process stuff. There's little bits and pieces of homework or things to take away and do. So there's a lot more kind of in depth and a lot more room when we're actually running the program itself. For the time being, I think I've rabbited on long enough. I'm going to leave it at that. However, I really, really look forward to sharing some of those thoughts, some of those ideas, some of those bits that I know about ACT and I know about anxiety. And I absolutely look forward to being able to kind of hear from you guys, to get your feedback, to get your questions. The whole before after, right? I'd love to kind of hear questions so that as I'm doing this live stream, I've got things that I can kind of respond to. But I'll also be really keen to hear how your experience of trying some of these things has worked. So when I kind of say, you know, try doing this just for the next kind of week, I want to hear whether that worked. I want to hear if it didn't work. Like I said, this is not like a magic bullet. I'm not going to try and pretend that by doing one thing, suddenly it's sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. But part of that is going to be really important for us. I want you guys to know that if you're asking a question, or if you have feedback, or if you have a concern, that you're heard. Even though I'm talking to a little camera, I know that somewhere out there are people who are actually then hearing this and kind of going, oh, okay. Absolutely. Send us feedback, send me questions, whether it's on the Facebook group. Technologically, I don't know if there's a better way of doing it, but let's just go with on the Facebook page, like, you know, send messages, do something around those questions, around those thoughts, around those kind of ideas. So, look, I look forward to seeing you over the next few weeks. And all going according to plan, next time I'll be on time and I actually know how to make things work now. So have as good a week as you can have. Have fun, enjoy yourself, do all those kind of things, and I will talk to you, see you? No, let's go with talk to you in the next week. Thanks a lot.